You live for 500 years, which sounds incredible, until you realize you're blind for almost all of it. Every single one of you has parasites, eating your eyeballs. You swim in near-freezing darkness at 1 mile per hour, and you won't even reach sexual maturity until you're 150 years old. And your flesh? It's so toxic that eating you raw causes hallucinations and death. Even you can't eat yourself. Welcome to life as a Greenland shark, where living for centuries isn't a blessing, it's a 500-year sentence in the Arctic abyss. Okay, imagine living for 5 centuries. You could witness the entire history of modern civilization from the Renaissance to the space age. Sounds amazing, right? All that time, all those experiences, except you spend all of it in near-freezing water, in near-total darkness, at crushing depths. You're so slow you can barely catch anything that's actually alive. You're blind because parasites have attached to your eyeballs and eaten them. And you're so toxic that your own flesh would poison you if you could. Somehow bite yourself. That 5-century lifespan, it's not a gift. It's an extremely slow death march through an underwater Arctic wasteland where you're barely functional. Let me explain why being the longest-lived vertebrate is actually nature's cruelest endurance test. All right, let's start with the most horrifying part, the eyeball parasites. Almost every Greenland shark has them. They're called Omatocoida elongata, parasitic copepods that attach to your corneas. These aren't tiny microscopic parasites. They're visible. About an inch long. They latch onto your eyeball. Both eyeballs usually. And they just hang there, dangling from your eyes, feeding on your corneal tissue. You can't shake them off. You can't rub them away. They're permanently attached. Some scientists think they might be bioluminescent, glowing in the dark. Which sounds cool until you realize these glowing parasites might actually attract prey toward your face. So the parasites are using you as bait. But here's the real horror. They destroy your vision. Not immediately, gradually, over years. Your corneas get damaged, scarred, clouded. Most adult Greenland sharks are functionally blind because of these parasites. You can maybe detect light and shadows. That's it. You're navigating the ocean without functional eyes for centuries. And there's nothing you can do about it. Every Greenland shark gets them. It's not bad luck. It's guaranteed. The moment you're big enough, these parasites find you and attach. And they stay there for the rest of your 500-year life. Imagine living for 5 centuries with creatures eating your eyeballs the entire time. Now let's talk about how you hunt while being functionally blind and swimming in darkness. Here's the problem. You're the slowest shark species on Earth. Your average swimming speed is 0.76 miles per hour. That's slower than most humans walk casually. A human swimming can easily outpace you. For comparison, great white sharks 25 mph, mako sharks 45 mph, you 0.76 mph. You're not so much swimming as drifting with purpose. So how do you catch prey when you're blind and slower than almost everything in the ocean? You don't, at least not live prey. Your main diet is carrion, dead things that sink to the ocean floor. Dead seals, dead fish, dead whales, anything that stopped moving. You're basically an underwater vulture. You use your incredible sense of smell to detect dead and dying animals from miles away. In the pitch-black Arctic depths, you're slowly gliding through the water, following chemical trails to corpses. And when you do catch live prey, it's usually something that's sleeping, like seals at the surface, already sick or dying, trapped or unable to escape. Scientists have found whole seals in Greenland shark stomachs. How did you catch a seal? You probably ambushed it while it was sleeping at the surface, or it was already dead and sinking. There's no way you're chasing down a healthy seal. You're too slow. They're too fast. You're blind, so you're relegated to eating corpses and ambushing sleeping animals. That's not apex predator behavior. That's opportunistic scavenging. Let's talk about why you're so slow. You live in freezing water. The Arctic and North Atlantic Oceans where you live are 28-41 degree POV, year-round. That's barely above freezing, and you're cold-blooded. Your body temperature matches the water. This slows everything down. Your metabolism is incredibly slow. You digest food over weeks or months instead of days. You grow incredibly slowly, less than half an inch per year. You move slowly, that's 0.76 NMP we talked about, and you mature slowly. You don't reach sexual maturity until you're about 50 years old. That's not a typo. 150 years before you can reproduce. Humans reach sexual maturity around age 12-15. Dogs, about 1 year. Most fish, 2-5 years. You, a century and a half. You could witness the entire industrial revolution before you're ready to have offspring. And here's the thing, because everything is so slow, you need to live in deep, cold water where there's not much competition. You're found at depths up to 7,200 feet. That's over a mile underwater. The pressure at those depths is crushing, over 3,000 psi. It's pitch black, near freezing, almost no food. You're living in one of the most hostile environments on Earth, and you live there for centuries. Now let's talk about something truly bizarre. You are poisonous. Your flesh contains extremely high concentrations of trimethylamine oxide, TMAO, and urea. These chemicals help you survive at depth and in cold water. They act as antifreeze and protect your proteins, but they make your meat toxic to eat. If a human eats your flesh raw or improperly prepared, they experience severe intoxication, hallucinations, loss of motor control, symptoms similar to extreme drunkenness. In severe cases, death. Icelandic cultures have eaten Greenland shark for centuries, but only after elaborate preparation. They bury your flesh underground for 6 to 12 weeks to let it ferment. Then they hang it to dry for several more months. This process breaks down the toxins enough to make you barely edible. The result is called hakar, and it's considered one of the worst tasting foods in the world. People describe it as tasting like ammonia-soaked rotten cheese. Even after months of preparation, you still taste horrible. So you're so toxic that 1. You can't be eaten fresh by anything. 2. Humans have to ferment you for months to make you semi-edible. 3. Even then, you taste disgusting. Your own flesh is a chemical weapon. And here's the kicker. Because you're a scavenger eating carrion, you accumulate toxins from everything you eat too. Heavy metals, pollutants, industrial waste. You're at the top of the food chain in the Arctic. So everything biomagnifies in your tissue. You're not just naturally toxic, you're contaminated with centuries of accumulated poison. Let's go back to that reproduction timeline because it's insane. You reach sexual maturity at approximately 150 years old. Think about what that means. You're born around the year 1875. You swim through the Arctic depths, blind, slow, eating corpses. You experience both world wars, the invention of airplanes, computers, the internet, the entire space age, the rise and fall of the Soviet Union, and you're still not ready to reproduce. Finally, around 2025, you reach sexual maturity. And here's what you get for waiting 150 years. Ovoviviparous reproduction. You give live birth, but the eggs hatch inside you. Pregnancy lasts 8-18 years, not 8-18 months, years. You're pregnant for potentially 2 decades. You give birth to maybe 10 pups per litter. Those pups are born at about 15 inches long. And now they have to survive for 150 years before they can reproduce. The generation time for Greenland sharks is one of the longest of any vertebrate. By the time your children are ready to have children, you might be 300 years old. Your great-grandchildren might not exist until you're 450. This is the slowest possible life cycle for a large animal. Let's talk more about where you live, the deep ocean. You spend most of your time at 600, 7,200 feet deep. That's permanent darkness. The sun doesn't reach down there. The pressure would crush most creatures. And it's empty. Food is scarce. Most animals can't survive down there. You're gliding through a freezing, pitch-black void, hoping to stumble across a corpse. Remember, you're blind, you're slow, you're in darkness. You're navigating by smell alone through an environment with almost no landmarks. Just endless cold water and occasional rocky bottom. Sometimes you come to shallower water, 200, 600 feet, where there's slightly more food. But you're still in near darkness. Still freezing. Still blind. And here's the thing about living at depth. You can't come up quickly. If you rise too fast, you risk decompression issues even though you're adapted to pressure. So you're trapped in the deep zones. You can't just swim to the surface for variety. You're committed to the abyss, century after century in the crushing, freezing darkness. Let's talk about something nobody discusses: loneliness. Greenland sharks are solitary. You don't have pods. You don't have schools. You don't have partners. You're alone for 500 years. You occasionally encounter other Greenland sharks, maybe for mating, maybe by chance. But mostly, you're by yourself in the dark. No social structure, no communication, no companionship. Just you, swimming slowly through freezing darkness blind for centuries. Think about that. 500 years of solitude. Humans go insane after weeks of isolation. You experience centuries of it. Now maybe you don't experience loneliness the way mammals do. Maybe your brain doesn't process social needs. but you're still experiencing 500 years of sensory deprivation. No light, you're blind anyway. No warmth, freezing water. No sound, mostly silent depths. No touch, occasional contact with prey or bottom. Just smell and taste leading you to dead things. That's not living. That's existing. For 5 centuries. And now let's talk about the future, because it's getting worse. Climate change is warming the Arctic faster than anywhere else on Earth. The ocean you've lived in for centuries is changing. Water temperatures are rising. Ice is melting. Your habitat is shrinking. And here's the problem. You're adapted to cold. You need freezing water for your metabolism to function. Your antifreeze proteins, your slow metabolism, your entire physiology depends on cold. As the Arctic warms, your habitat shrinks toward the poles. Your food sources change. New predators and competitors move into warming waters. Your slow reproduction means you can't adapt quickly. You reproduce every 150 plus years. Evolution through natural selection requires generational turnover. Other species can evolve within decades because they reproduce quickly. Your generation time is measured in centuries. By the time your species could potentially adapt to warming oceans through evolution, the Arctic might have already changed beyond recognition. You're facing environmental catastrophe in slow motion. And there's nothing you can do about it because everything about you operates on a 500-year timescale. Here's something disturbing. Scientists barely understand you. You live too deep, too remote, too cold. Most of what we know about Greenland sharks comes from dead specimens that wash up, occasional catches in fishing nets, a handful of deep-water camera observations. Nobody has successfully studied your full life cycle. Nobody has observed your mating behavior. Nobody knows exactly how long you live. The 500-year estimate comes from radiocarbon, dating eye lenses. And here's why this matters. You could be going extinct right now and we wouldn't know. Your population could be collapsing and we'd have no data. Because you live so deep, so remotely. For so long, humans can't effectively monitor you. You're invisible to science. And that means you're invisible to conservation efforts. If Greenland sharks disappeared tomorrow, we might not notice for decades. You're living in obscurity, dying in obscurity. 500 years of existence and nobody's even watching. And here's the final horror, you can't choose this life. You're born into it. The moment you're born, already in freezing dark water, your fate is sealed. You will be infected by eyeball parasites. You will go blind. You will swim slowly through darkness for centuries. You will eat mainly corpses. You will wait 150 years to reproduce. You will live for 500 years in the most hostile environment on Earth. There's no escape, no alternative, no variation. Every Greenland shark experiences this exact same nightmare. You don't get to choose a warmer habitat, you die. You don't get to swim faster, your metabolism won't allow it. You don't get to avoid the parasites, they're inevitable. You don't get to die young, your body just keeps functioning for centuries. You're trapped in a 500-year endurance test you never signed up for. So let's recap what it's like being a Greenland shark. Live for 500 plus years, longest lived vertebrate. Parasites attach to both eyeballs and eat them. Functionally blind for most of your life. Slowest shark on Earth, 0.76 amp. Live in near freezing water, 2841 degree. Live in pitch black darkness at crushing depths. Can't catch healthy prey, eat mainly corpses. Don't reach sexual maturity until 150 years old pregnancy lasts. 18 years flesh is toxic, causes hallucinations and death. Completely solitary, alone for centuries. Can't adapt quickly to climate change, too slow. Live in sensory deprivation for 500 years. Invisible to science, nobody's monitoring your survival. Greenland sharks are proof that living longer isn't always better. You don't get 500 years of experiences and adventure. You get 500 years of blind, freezing, solitary existence in the abyss, swimming at walking speed, eating corpses, waiting decades between meals. That's not longevity. That's a prison sentence measured in centuries. If you enjoyed learning about nature's longest living nightmare, smash that like button and subscribe for more Why It Sucks to Be videos. Drop a comment. Would you rather be a Greenland shark, 500 blind years in freezing darkness, or a mayfly, 24 hours of adult life? Is it better to live long and suffer or live briefly? Thanks for watching. And remember, sometimes the longest life is the cruelest punishment.